For the second day of our training. I'm very excited and energized to be here again today. I hope you are also. I think we had a great day yesterday, and we had a lot of interesting questions on the Padlet, which we have tried to be responsive to. I want to encourage you for this second day to try and make this as interactive as possible and to really have you post any of your questions in the Padlet. We'll try to respond as we go. And any questions left unanswered or that requires discussions, we'll try to save time at the end and maybe address those. So just to quickly summarize from yesterday, I think yesterday was a very intense session. I hope it wasn't too much to absorb. You'll notice that we shared plenty of background material and there's a lot of reading that can be done in parallel to this. But in brief, I hope you really came away with the idea that graduation is a household level approach focused on the poorest, the most excluded, the most vulnerable, with the idea that you need a multidimensional integrated package to really help these people lift out of poverty and engage into sustainable livelihoods. It's a time-bound intervention that really seeks to do a big push to help people out of extreme poverty and on an upward trajectory. And really, I think that what we want you to take away from this is that it can build and leverage any existing social protection, social development programming that you already have. I think we heard Hashmi say, integrate, convergence, really try to see what is out there that you can build on to offer this integrated package in the most cost-effective way. I think we heard from Nash that this program has a lot of research, has been researched already a lot, that it's proven that this approach can help poorest households increase their incomes and assets. And what was really nice from Nash's example from the Philippines is that it also showed you how this type of program can help ADB reach its objectives, its programming objectives. We got several questions in the Padlet around targeting, around graduation indicators, and on this question of convergence, which you'll see we've tried to address. Please read through those comments. But one question that came back and back was on how do you make this more cost effective? How do you decrease costs? And so today, I'm very happy that we'll be diving in on two issues. The first is really related to costs. It's on digital innovations. Now, digital in and of itself is no magic word, but we're going to hear about some innovations that can really help you decrease the costs of programming. The second hour of today's session will be focused on another issue that didn't come up so much in the Padlet yet, but that we know from the questionnaire we sent you on the objectives for this training is of great importance to you in many of your operations. And it's on how do you use the graduation approach to build household resilience. Yesterday, we had our first one-on-one session with the Philippines, and the question of how do you use this to build resilience really came up preeminently. So I'm happy that our second session today, our second hour, will be really honing in on this question of building resilience. So without further ado, I'd like to again encourage you to use the Padlet actively. Feel free to post questions in the chat. Feel free even to, interrupt, chime in if needed for clarifying questions. We really want to make this interactive and participatory for you. I'll now turn over to the next slide and start our session on the potential for digital innovations. Basically, this is a framework that I've put together on where can digital interventions intervene within the graduation approach. Basically, this is very schematic, but there's one side of the digital innovations that are really about interacting with the users, giving a user a phone, giving them a tablet, having them lending them a tablet and having them interact with the phone, and really look into things like training, reminders with behavioral insights built in, connections and references to marketplaces, coaching through the phone, etc. So all that is really on the interacting with user side and trying to increase the program outcomes. The second part of the digital innovations, where we see large potential for digital innovations, is really on the programmatic side. The idea is to see how digital innovations can help you and help coaches from the program side really better monitor, with a handheld device, better monitor clients, participants, really, when they arrive at a household, see, have reminders about who this household is, get prompts on anything that's important, if possible, building in predictive analytics, artificial intelligence, and having reminders tell you, this household you're visiting now, they have this problem with their asset, or it looks like, they're falling behind as compared to their neighbors, or it looks like their trajectory is not linear, and you should be paying particular attention when you visit them. So these are really the kind of two big buckets that I'd like to refer to schematically. So one is really facing the client, and the other is really facing the staff and the program management. Now, this is schematic because there are actually a lot of crossovers between both. And sometimes it's not as simple as a client has a phone in their hand, but it might be, someone in the village has a phone in their hand and shares it, or someone in the self-help group has a phone, or the program might give a phone to a group of like 15 women. There are a lot of different variations on this spectrum. Someone is speaking. If you could kindly mute. So today we'll hear two examples in two breakout rooms that we would really like to encourage you to join. The first breakout room will be with Carolina de Miranda, who's joining us from Fundación Capital in Latin America. It's 4 a.m. right now where Carolina is, so I hope that she'll be able and in sufficient shape to do the presentation herself. If not, I have it as a backup. And she'll be telling us about about Connector, which is a IVR chatbot. It's a personal assistant that Fundación Capital has developed to reach graduation and other very poor program participants via WhatsApp chats and Facebooks. It's really adapted to use storytelling in simple language and to include practical examples from the everyday lives of poor people. And it's something that Fundación Capital has been using in Colombia, Mexico, and Paraguay. So that's the first breakout. And as you'll see, this is really client-facing. The second breakout will be by ComCare. ComCare is a data collection and case management app that's used to collect and track data over time. It was developed by Dimagi, and ADB is actually piloting the use of this app with the government of the Philippines, and we'll hear from Marlo Popes about the ComCare app. And here, really, ComCare is part of that second bucket of digital innovations that are really facing the program, that are really on the programmatic side, trying to improve program management and monitoring, bringing in some predictive analytics in the process. So please, you're free to select any room you want. And if you're already familiar with Comcare, I suggest you try and join Connector. If not, just choose which ones you're most interested in. You're free to select your room. 1 minute before time is up, you will be you'll be prompted to rejoin the main room, and we look forward to seeing you back there. Just a comment is, if you're hesitant, please stick to one room and make sure that you listen to the recording. All the sessions will be recorded, and you'll be able to listen into the room you've missed. So with that, I'd like to invite you to select your rooms and see you back in 20 minutes. Thank you. I think several of us are wondering how to get to the breakout rooms. I think we will get a prompt that will remind us, which will allow us to join one of the breakout rooms. Correct, Yuki?
Hi all, this is Jen. We just set up the breakout rooms. Participants, if you can see on your more section or 3 dots, you may have the breakout rooms option, and then you can join between Comcare or Conhector. There's a join button on each of those options. Yeah, I can see some of the participants already joined Comcare. How about Connector? Maybe some of you are interested. Please feel free to join these sessions. These sessions are open for 30 minutes, and we will have you back at the plenary after the breakout sessions. Thank you.
Hi, sorry, we can't find the 3 dots and the breakout sessions. Thank you.
Yeah, same here. We don't have that option available on the screen.
Same for me.
Same
maybe
here,
you can just assign us.
Thanks. Yeah, maybe that's best.
Perhaps we can assign you randomly, if that's okay. Thank you.
Yep,
yeah, please,
that's fine.
please.
Thank you.
Hi, sorry, I still don't have a breakout group. Can you please assign me to Con Hector from the Fundación Capital? Thank you.
Hi, Dristi. Which room would you like to join again so I can assign you?
Hey, could you please put me in the connector one? Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. I see others who have not joined the breakout session. Do you need guidance on how to move to the breakout session, or can you see the join button? In any case, please drop a message on the chat box if you need help. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Jen, if you can kindly prompt me when everyone's back in the main room, and I'll get us started again. Thank you.
Okay, Odd.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you. I hope everyone had a productive time during the breakouts. We certainly had a really interesting presentation about Connector. Again, I want to remind everybody that both sessions were recorded and that you are able to listen into the presentation by the other group later. If we can move to the next slide, I just want to wrap up this session on digital innovations by telling you that BRAC Institute for Governance and Development hosts a working group which I facilitate that is focused really on looking at the digital innovations that exist for graduation. And sometimes these are digital innovations that are being used by graduation participants, graduation programs in different parts of the world. Thank you. And other times it's also digital innovations that are coming from other sectors. For example, mobile, what we call M-nutrition, mobile nutrition, but like the nutrition sector, the healthcare sector more broadly, education sector. There are a lot of innovations that are coming out from these sectors that are actually very applicable to the graduation context. So every month, I host a demo of these innovations. They're recorded and they're posted on socialprotection.org. And so I just want to encourage you, if this is something of interest, or if you have, or if you're working on an innovation and you want it to be shared, or you want feedback from other like-minded colleagues about it, please feel free to join the working group. You can always text me, email me to learn more about this. With this, I want to thank everyone for actively participating in this first part of the morning. This wraps up our first section on digital innovations. And Yuki, I'd like to turn to you and ask, should we take a few questions or should we go right into the resilience?
I think given the time, I think we're on the dot to start the building resilience, the next session. So why don't we start, and then definitely after this 10 minutes is over, we can tune for the Q&A before the further breakout. Yes?
Perfect. Okay, thank you. This sounds great. So with this, I'd like to start our part of the agenda on building resilience. I think this is a topic that definitely came you know, high on the agenda for the first one-on-one breakout session we hosted yesterday with the Philippines. The team joining from the Philippines reminded us things we hear about in the news, obviously, but the frequent typhoons, the flooding, the rains, and just the general heat that was a problem. And Hashmi was reflecting that this is also, I mean, all these issues are extremely prevalent in Bangladesh and in other parts of the world. What we know is that extreme poverty and climate change are intrinsically linked. As climate change worsens, it really is going to accelerate and amplify the systemic inequalities of extreme poverty, food insecurity, and general injustice and inequality. We know that people living in chronic fragility are 10 times more likely to live in an area that's vulnerable to climate change as anyone else. As a reminder, I just pulled out some data on the next slide from the State of Economic Inclusion report. You'll be familiar with this report right now, the report published, we published at the World Bank last year, which shows that over 32% of programs focus on resilience. So the main objective of these graduation programs are to increase resilience. what do we mean when we say resilience? I think for the purpose of today, I mean, it's a very complex notion, but what we're trying to talk about is the strength and ability of a household to manage risk and to respond and cope with shocks when they arrive. So this is really what we're talking about, is the ability to manage and respond big challenges and climatic stresses. So the topic for this morning's last hour of the training is really thinking about how can the graduation approach help build resilience. And the way we want to go about this is really to think about each pillar, each big building block of the graduation approach has something to offer in terms of helping build resilience. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to break out into 4 small groups to think about each of the building blocks of graduation and discuss, you know, what falls under this building block and how can that element help boost resilience. And one of us from the organizing team will be in each small group. So there'll be there'll be a group thinking about social protection, which Yuki will join. There'll be a small group talking about livelihoods promotion, which Hashmi will join. There'll be a group talking about financial inclusion and how that can help build resilience, and I will join. And then there'll be a group talking about social empowerment, and that will be with Dristi joining. So each of you, please, if you have particular interest in one of these topics, please join that small group. Otherwise, just feel free to select one that might be of interest to you. And we will have a conversation in these smaller groups. And then please, each small group, remember to nominate a rapporteur, someone who will talk about what you discussed in your small group, so that we share when we are back in the plenary together. So if Jen, you can kindly prompt people to join small groups. This is the moment to choose your smaller rooms. Thank you.
Can somebody move me to the social protection subgroup? I came back for this purpose. I don't know how to go there.
Okay, Omer. How about you, Beth?
Yes, me too. Thank you.
Me too. Can you please move me to the social empowerment group? Thank you. This is Jane.
Okay, Jane.
And is it possible to move me to financial breakout room? This is Gohar.
Okay, Gohar, just a moment.
Thank you.
And for me, it's social protection group, please.
Hi, for me to social protection group, please. Thank you.
Hi, I'm still in the big room. Sorry.
Okay, now Jane. Hope you got it.
Okay. How can I do that? Okay, join. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Is there anyone else who needs support into moving to the other breakout session? You may drop your message in the chat box or just open your microphone so I can hear you. Thank you.
welcome back, everyone. I don't know, Jen, can you give me a hint when everyone is back in the main room? A prompt?
Hi all. Yes, all good. Everyone's back. Thank you.
Great, great. Well, thank you. I hope you had productive times in your small groups. I know that Dristi and I had very small groups, and so we had a bit of a conversation and then ended up joining back into the livelihoods and the social protection core groups. But let's have a look at, you know, what we have here. And really, I'm going to invite everyone, different people from different small groups to report back. So maybe starting with the pillar 1 on social protection, if you can tell us what are the interventions that you discussed that fit under this pillar and how they can be adapted to build resilience.
So the birthday girl is going to be a representative. So happy birthday, Cindy.
Hi, everyone.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, I'm just going to move my screen over so I can look in the camera. Thanks, everyone. It's been such a lovely day at ADB. And so thanks to all my colleagues for making it special. I even got some flowers, which they're behind me here.
Wow.
Yay. Okay, so look, I was a little worried when I got put in the social protection group, actually, because I thought, well, I think social empowerment and livelihood promotion might have been easier, but actually we had a really good discussion as a group. And so I do encourage my colleagues just to step in at any time. I'm going to try my best at summarizing. I think we had looked at just overall in terms of the real importance of cross-cutting and the cross-cutting issue of making people raising awareness and having the strategic coaching as a way of building the resilience across all of the social protection measures that we are now going to bring up. So the most obvious social protection measure is the cash transfer, and that can come in also in-kind or consumption support, also cash for work. And we had decided that in terms of how do you make it more, how could you make these more interventions more be adapted so that they are building resilience? We would want to make sure that you're linking the beneficiaries with other registered programs. So you're making sure that you're really focusing on the social registration. And also you want to consider the delivery method of cash transfers to think about how it might build resilience, particularly in a time of disasters. So, you know, maybe a bank account might be the way, maybe a Gcash or mobile phone might be better. But basically the importance of these measures in terms of building resilience is to avoid negative coping mechanisms, and such as, like, you know, sending children to work or going and borrowing money. So it was, in a way, it's the foundation of resilience for very poor who are, you know, potentially in a disaster. So if we have a look, and that sort of that sort of covers like vouchers and in-kind transfers as well. We looked at the green column, the green ones, and this was kind of looking at measures to support access to livelihoods and recovery funds after there had been an impact, say certainly in times of say resettlement programs. If we have a look, yeah, I'm looking at the green ones now. So like, and that would include sort of compensation for loss of assets. How could we make them more? How could we make them more? How could we adapt them to make them build more resilience? We felt that fundamentally, it was really important that there was a lot of support to make sure that the reasons why the compensation was provided is to do no harm. So, you know, you have to provide a lot of support to ensure that the compensation is actually addressing that fundamental concept of do no harm first, and then that would be the basis of building resilience from there. And so we should go hand in hand with financial management training and how to best use that compensation. And if we go to the purple area, these ones were social protection measures that perhaps focused on more vulnerable groups, and they might be fee waivers for basic services, ensuring access to healthcare, or special cash transfers or regular payments for the elderly and single women. And it was really important that these measures are included in the social protection potential activities, because it really is important that when we build resilience, that we also make sure that we are providing extra measures for the most vulnerable. And then I think that's kind of it. We had sort of a basic universal income, but I think that sort of covered under the cash transfer. So I'll just open it up and let my colleagues come in and see if they've got anything else they wanted to mention. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Anyone from that group want to chime in?
Hi, Beth here. Maybe just to add from Cindy's comprehensive explanation is often countries have existing social protection programs, so they have databases. And during times of crisis, that could be horizontally or vertically expanded to include other groups that are affected by crisis. So therefore, really the entry point is, those social protection databases that are available in countries.
Super important. Thanks, Ninabeth, for adding that. Thank you. Anyone else?
I think we're all good. I mean, we had a very good discussion, and we had a lot of people who had shared their experience also from their specific program. So it was a good breakout. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's move to the livelihood promotion. Hashmi, I know that you were facilitating that group. Can you tell us a bit more, or someone from your group, tell us a bit more about what you think from graduation comes under this pillar, and then how, those livelihood types of interventions can help build resilience?
Instead of following what you're saying, I think it would be good to report on the discussions, and then somebody will report on it, and then I'll come in at the end to tie it together. Go ahead. Who did we decide was going to talk? Shashwati?
Okay.
Shashwati? Go ahead.
Thank you. You got my name right. Okay. We had lively discussions too in our group, and people presented their experience in various projects, mostly ADB projects. And we discussed how we are integrating graduation in economic development, in livelihood promotion related to resettlement, in the context of climate resilience, and also in newer projects which are still at the concept paper stage in ecotourism and in watershed management, etc. So it was very good to learn that graduation is actually getting integrated into mainstream ADB projects, and which is very different from the way, as Hashmi pointed out, how graduation was implemented earlier. It used to be probably a standalone graduation program that was designed. But these are these are different, and they are being integrated and implemented. So that's the way to actually take graduation forward. And then we also acknowledged the importance of the graduation approach to bolster all elements in a project. And we acknowledge that project elements can likewise bolster the graduation approach outcomes. So those were the sort of discussions that we had. And we also had a discussion on, how we are implementing and designing graduation. Is it with NGO support or without? And so we have the example of Tamil Nadu, where we designed with the support of an NGO, but it will be implemented by government, and how government is really capable of scaling it up more than NGOs. So those were the sort of discussions we had. Whereas in Bangladesh, in the Coastal Towns project, we will be designing and implementing through NGOs. So if I've missed anything, please, my team members may jump.
Orna, why don't you add, say something? You had a lot to discuss.
I think that Saswati covered everything. Like the main thing that we're seeing the difference is both Hashmi and Saswati mentioned that we have the intercomplementarity of the graduation approach, and now it's being used as a tool, not just to enhance the livelihoods of individuals, but also as a tool to enhance their ownership over the project and improve the outcomes of the project for the individuals who are impacted, and then vice versa. The project is also enhancing the outcomes in terms of graduation approach. But that's it.
Just a couple of things. For me, a few things that emerged from these discussions was that graduation, not as something standalone, but graduation as part of larger projects, be it reducing the impacts of climate vulnerability, be it some resettlement program, or whatever. There's a space for this, but we in the graduation world must also then open our eyes to acknowledge that we have a limited, narrow level of expertise. It's good, deep expertise. We know about the lives of poor people. We know why or how to make sure that they build confidence, that they're empowered, and how they build livelihoods. Now, in terms of building livelihoods here, what I learned, or what was discussed, is in large projects, there are two levels that livelihoods get impacted. So if you're building climate resilience, if you're doing watershed programs, or if you're doing ecotourism projects, there's things happening at that level. So for example, it's a good watershed project that immediately increases the fertility of your land. That ensures that you're not suffering from flood damages. So that has an economic impact. Or a big dam, of course I'm a little careful about dams, but that has an economic impact for all poor people. That's part of it. We need to be appreciating that, understanding that, and seeing how our livelihoods can fit in. And secondly, as part of that, what are the new enterprises, the new pathways, livelihood pathways, economic opportunities that open up that we want those that are excluded, poor people, to gain access to. So we need to be prepared to build off of that, coming up with new ideas. And as part of that, like even social assistance programs, using that, and we talked about that a little bit, like allowing that to lead to skills training for employment, for jobs, and also with enterprises, not stay focused only on individual enterprises, individual economic activities. Of course, group enterprises need a lot more thinking because there's far higher probabilities that it might not work. But that is like a tourism, ecotourism thing. It's not necessarily about individual households benefiting, but a group then that does maybe providing guide support, or other things. So we're looking at not just individual, but group enterprises and group activities. And the last thing that wasn't discussed here, but it's about empowerment. We need to be, as we're working with poor people, with all these projects, we need to look beyond just individual household, women in the individual household becoming empowered. So for example, when we were talking about the ecotourism project, that allows, especially because it's an area that has always suffered from colonization, from mainstream discrimination against them. So also be looking at not just individual women or individuals getting empowered, but as a collective. How does or how can the ecotourism project promote some sort of pride in their culture, their traditions, in their tribal ways, and how do they develop agency to interact with the mainstream community? I just wanted to throw that in, and I know Orna mentioned that in passing, but I picked up on that. That's something we'll also have to be looking at when we're developing livelihoods. Thank you.
If I can just add,
Just
add to that last point that you made, because one of the things that we feel is very important, and part of the reason why we've decided to integrate the graduation approach in our projects is because of the social empowerment pillar. And we're looking at how can not just ecotourism spawn from these Indigenous areas, but how can the Indigenous people assert self-governance, autonomy, and true ownership and true benefit from the commercialization of their own resources. And we see that the graduation approach is possibly one of the only livelihoods type interventions that could provide us sort of security that we would be able to do that. And yeah, so that's hopefully something that we can design into our project.
Thank you. I think that will be something that we'll also discuss in Pillar 4 on social empowerment. Just briefly, I'm going to report back in the group on financial inclusion because it was a small breakout and then it had shy members. So I'm just going to briefly report out. So what we discussed here is really, the importance of the financial inclusion component is mainly around the savings, building a steady cushion to help people accumulate a certain amount of cash in case of a shock. It might be also a small emergency credit in the case of a shock. In some cases, what we discussed is, the accumulation of a small cushion might avoid some negative coping mechanisms, the sale of an asset. We talked about the savings being, preferably formal, preferably digital, so that it can be linked to a government cash transfer program, so that it can be topped up in the case of an emergency through a government transfer, a government or an insurance mechanism that might be triggered by any, shock, climatic shock, drought, etc. It might be also front-loaded when a shock is upcoming and there is some visibility about that. We talked about the option of having these financial inclusion elements also include some form of insurance, though there isn't yet a lot of experience. We talked about, linking the livelihood of the participant to agricultural insurance, livestock insurance, or also in the case of some graduation pilots, linking to a government health insurance or micro insurance, health micro insurance program from the private sector. So that was the main content from our group on the financial inclusion. Again, it was a small group, and we actually split up and joined the livelihoods and social protection discussions. Dristi, can I pass it over to you to talk about the conversation you had in the social empowerment pillar?
Thank you, Odd. Unfortunately, social empowerment pillar proved to be a little less popular, so we only had the two of us. So we decided to actually dissolve and went to some other groups. But just want to highlight a few points under this pillar so that it's not completely left out, because it is an important pillar as it focuses on behavior change and social inclusion and social empowerment, just like Orna was mentioning in her project. And I'd like to highlight that there are a couple of different interventions that have been done in graduation programs, graduation type, economic inclusion, productive inclusion programs that have worked really well. And some of it is through training, and there are different types of training, and there is now growing base of evidence that is showing the different types of training and their impact on knowledge, on behavior change. So for example, personal initiatives and soft skills training that focuses on building confidence, building leadership skills among the participants are some examples. There are also traditional training topics like important social and health topics that are covered in graduation programs, which are most commonly seen in graduation projects worldwide. And these would include disaster risk management, knowledge on different types of diseases, gender roles, gender norms, and so on. So different types of social as well as health topics. There's also coaching and mentoring that falls under this pillar, which have both been very important and are critical in the impact that we have seen, particularly in boosting confidence, growing aspirations among the target populations that these types of programs target, who are vulnerable, who usually don't have access to mainstream services, and so therefore they lack the confidence to even access these. So the coaches, the mentors, the personal relationships that they're able to build has proven to be critical to initiate and to facilitate these behavior change, to build that confidence and help them access these services, link them to resources and services locally. In some of the graduation programs, we've also seen that there are examples of community groups that have been formed particularly as a part of the program. So for example, BRAC does village solidarity groups where they're members of, representatives of participants of the programs who are part of this group, as well as community leaders, certain leaders like religious leaders who can also participate and form this group so that any grievances that come up or any in times of needs or any needs that arise are elevated to this group that has membership from all these different walks of life, including participants of the programs, and it can be addressed as a community priority. So for example, when the COVID lockdown happened in Bangladesh, in BRAC, they leveraged these platforms, these groups to raise funds, to spread awareness, information about social distancing and sanitation and so on. And on a regular basis in non-COVID time, we've seen that this group has been particularly effective in raising funds to address needs of very specific households, some certain families that might have very specific urgent needs, like in the winter if they need blankets, if there's a roof that needs to be repaired, and there is a particularly deprived family or household that needs the community support. It has been helpful in bringing them together. And there are other examples other than this example from BRAC where effectively community groups have been formed as a part of the graduation program, but also community groups that may be existent that can be leveraged. So for example, mother groups are quite common in South Asia, Salsa groups, or other types of particularly groups among women in rural areas especially can be found So there can be existing community groups that can also be leveraged to use them as platforms to provide these trainings, provide coaching beyond the time of the project duration as well. So just few points, although we didn't actually have the discussion, but few examples of interventions that come under this pillar that would be helpful to be adapted to build resilience among the participants. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dristi. I think this is really good. I'd like to ask Jen and Timmy if we can move over to the word cloud. I think this last point from Dristi was super helpful in terms of linking us back to the idea that, you know, the social empowerment pillar is also a place where some of this collective action that Hashmi was talking about can happen. You know, we've seen social empowerment interventions help foster civic and even political engagement, for example, you know, really encouraging women to take action within their communities. And so I think this really also moves into, you know, reminds us that there, you know, graduation is a household level program, but there's only so much you can do at the household level. And sometimes you also need these community level interventions, or you need to foster some group collective action also. So thank you. Timmy, can you share the instructions for using the QR code here?
Yes, everyone. Please scan the QR code or go to menti.com and type the code 5855-3598 to answer our reflection question. Thank you. So in one word, how can graduation approach best help build resilience?
I'm sorry, how do we scan the QR code is gone?
Okay, I'll get you back to the QR code. Can you see it, everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I think we're now all on the proper page. Okay, I will now go to the next page. Let me just wait for a few more participants.
Wow, this is dynamically building up. Thank you. Please, everyone, continue to submit your ideas and words. I think this is a nice illustration of the conversations we've been having in small groups. As I just quickly look at these, you know, it's really, and trying to sum up, you know, a very intense 2 hours here, especially this last hour on resilience. What I see here, I think, can be, you know, grouped together, although it keeps on moving around. But, you know, I see a bulk of words around awareness, around information, around capacity, around preparedness. And so really, I think this is really about, you know, the early warning and the preparedness to any type of climate or man-made shock, but in particular climate. So I see a whole bulk around the preparedness. Then I think there are several things around the adaptation. I see things about home improvement, around new skills, training, hand-holding, building savings. And so I think there's a lot here around the adaptation. And then I think some of the things we see here, you know, are around new livelihood opportunities, community level empowerment, community level livelihoods, and interventions. And I think this is really very much around the kind of transition and actually making, you know, making this transition as fair as possible and taking advantage of, you know, taking something bad for something good and taking advantage of new livelihoods opportunities that might be emerging, new agricultural techniques that might be coming out, and really moving into new opportunities for a fairer climate transition. So again, I think there are things within graduation around the preparedness, around the adaptation and mitigation of climate change, and then, you know, more positively around the adaptation and the seizing of new climate smart opportunities. With that, I would like to thank you for a very dynamic and participative 2 hours, a very nice 2 days for us with you yesterday and today. I will have the pleasure with other colleagues, Yuki, Dristi, Hashmi, to be in small breakout one-on-ones with some of you. And again, I think Hashmi has said this many times, but graduation is our life and passion, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have also on the side of this training at any time. With that, I'd like to turn over back to you, Yuki, for the formal wrap up. Thank you. Thank you.
Yep. So nothing but to thank everyone. I myself enjoyed a lot this past 2 days, and I hope you all did. I guess, you know, we would take up the offer of Hashmi and also Odd and Dristi for their passion. And I'd like to just informally kind of form this as a very informal network. So what I'm going to be doing is, while I'm going to be sending you the reference materials and the recording links and also an evaluation that I appreciate if everyone can fill that up, I normally do it in a BCC form, but if it's okay with you, I'll just do it for everyone to be 2, so that everyone can respond to whatever question in the future you may have about something about your project that you want to consult someone out there in the cloud. Someone might from the cloud be able to respond to you. So it's very informal kind of a way of just establishing this. I don't know how long it will last, but let's just give it a try. So with that, I'd like to thank, and we still have some one-on-one session for those to proceed. There is Saswati is going to be in touch with the Tamil Nadu colleagues if they would be available on a particular day and time for your one-on-one session if you would like. So Saswati will be in touch with you. And other than that, thank you very much, everyone, for this joyful 2 days, and hope to see you back again. Bye.
Bye.